Welcome back. I wanted to try something different today. I wanted to try to go over some of the titles I've actually been able to make some progress in, or even finish in the case of one of the titles today. Because as you know, if you've listened to the podcast any amount of time, you know I have a massive backlog that I am steadily trying to work through, trying to find the time to actually get to some of those games. And I thought this might be a good way to hold myself accountable, while at the same time letting you guys know about what I'm playing, give my impression on some of those titles, let you know if they're worth your time, because I know we only have so many hours in the day. We only have so much time we can devote to the games we buy, and as more games go on sale and new releases come out, that backlog steadily gets piled up on, and it's hard to pass over on some of those deals. You might be like me. You might see a game that goes on sale dirt cheap and you're like, well, I'll play that, and then it sits in the backlog for years and years. This is just my way of holding myself accountable and letting you guys know what I think of some of these games. If they're worth playing, are they worth your valuable time? Because time is something that we can't get more of. We don't all have the same amount. We all have a finite amount of that. We just have to use that wisely. So first and foremost, if you're new here to the Would You Gaming podcast, make sure if you haven't, you follow us on one of our social platforms. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at this time. YouTube as well. We haven't really uploaded much there. I kind of want to try to put the podcast up there. If I have to put segments, snippets, or whatnot up there, we'll try to do something like that going forward. But for the time being, just uploading card openings on the Pokemon TCG, kind of into that on the other end of things as well. I collect that and enjoy that a good bit as well. But diving right into things, I want to start off with a title that I was actually able to finish, and it's one that I had my eye on since it was announced. And that title was Eastward. This game was dropped onto the Nintendo Switch. I think it might be a timed Switch exclusive. I believe it may be on Steam as well. I'm not 100% certain. But this is a beautiful title. It's got beautiful hand-drawn art. The music in this game is just next level. It really draws you in. It's very atmospheric. And the game itself is not just very upbeat and uplifting. It is a very dark game. So you follow around John and Sam, the protagonist, a younger girl, Sam, who John had found in a tube in a cave. Not revealing too much here in the means of plot or otherwise, but just going over some of that story that you see right off the bat from the opening cutscene. Now, the story tells us that they live in a subterranean town. And eventually they find their way out of there, and they discover that there is this miasma that goes across the land, and it just consumes people. And of course, death is a result of that. So there's some darker undertones as a part of this game. The music really uplifts it in the lower, scarier areas, or when you're dealing with that miasma. It has that atmospheric music that is very somber. In the upbeat towns, it has that as well. And I found myself just humming some of these songs, some of the music as I went along when I wasn't even playing the game. And I really, that's what drew me in a lot. That, and I saw a lot where this was compared online like a love letter to Zelda and Earthbound. I can say Zelda for sure. I'm not that familiar with Earthbound. I have played the SNES title almost to completion, but it definitely seems like they took a page out of Zelda's book, because the combat is kind of isometric from top down. And you, of course, have John as the main character. He has multiple weapons he can get across the game. He starts out with a frying pan that is eventually upgraded further and further. He gets a shotgun, a flamethrower, and a skill saw, like a blade shooting gun as well. And Sam, you can switch between her and Sam once Sam gets a little bit of her abilities. Sam has the ability to like freeze enemies in place. So you can switch on the fly, kind of freeze them in place, and then take John and go up there and smack him with your frying pan to finish off an enemy. So there's a little bit of that in the combat. You can switch back and forth, and it can be quite difficult at times. There are many times that I saw the game over screen and had to retry for my last save, because it is a difficult game in certain spots. Certain bosses took me a little bit of time to figure out what I actually needed to do there. Some you might have to drop a bomb and time it correctly so that it can hit the enemy as they pass through. And there's just some different elements to this game. This game was designed by a couple people out of Hong Kong, I believe. And I really hope that they come back with a sequel to this sometime in the future, because I really enjoyed my time with it. Of course, this was published by, what was it, Chucklefish? And of course, they're best known for publishing Stardew Valley. It's a beautiful game, beautiful title. The story is one that I highly recommend to anybody who might be on the fence. I think the game is like $25 or $30. Well worth the price of admission there, if you have to ask me. I would advise you play this if it looks interesting to you. I was drawn in from the moment I started the art style of it. The art style alone was what got me into it. And then, of course, I played the gameplay loop, and the music as a whole was next level. It was just something that I enjoyed thoroughly. Something about music in a game, if it has good music and a good gameplay loop, it can make up for a lot of defects that a game might have. And while the game might not be perfect, it was a lot of fun, and that's what I look for. I want to have an enjoyable experience and have a decent story told to me sometimes when I play these games, and this definitely delivered on that promise. The game is not short by any stretch of the imagination. I thought it might be like a 10, 15, maybe 20-hour game. Overall, I sunk over 30 hours into this game, and for the cost of that definitely gives you very good value for the amount you pay for it. There are many other characters that are in this game, and in the world around that you are in, there are robots that coincide with humans. They work together to do things, and you learn a lot about the backstory of that and what's actually going on as you progress through it. Not to get into any spoilers here or anything, but Sam is the key to much of this. Sam is very important, thus why John found her in a tube underground. She is very instrumental to the plot of this, and it kind of revolves around her a great deal. You meet many other characters like Alva and Isabel. I think Alva or Isabel may be an android. Then of course you meet Daniel and William. Daniel being a robot boy that William has built, and it's a very touching story. There's some loss in this game that you experience, and while it might not be gut-wrenching, it can definitely pull on the heartstrings a bit. Any game that can immerse you to that level or get you that invested in characters where you actually have a stake in it or care when something happens to them, I'm all for that, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy when writers or game developers are able to push that narrative and actually draw you into their world in such a way. It's interesting, and I really highly recommend this title to anybody who may be on the fence about it. I actually finished this a couple months ago, and I've been meaning to sit down and record this. Had this and another title I was working on as well. Was hoping to finish that second title, but have not as of yet. So we'll segue right into that. That second title, of course, was Death's Door. Now, from the moment I saw this, when it was announced for Microsoft for the Xbox consoles, and I believe Steam as well, I knew that I wanted to play this title. It's a isometric top-down like a title, and you play as a tiny crow he works for the, what is it he works for? It's like the Reaper Commission headquarters. Basically, they work and they collect souls from people who should be dying. If it's their time, they go and reap that soul. They go and they, of course, kill the thing, take the soul, and then return it. Now, what happens is when you first start out, you go out on your very first assignment. You go and you kill a monster, and before you can reap a soul, an old crow actually comes up behind you, a bigger crow, and knocks you out and takes that soul, and he feeds it to the Death's Door. And it's not enough to open the Death's Door. As a result of that soul being stolen from you and you not being able to return it, because once one of these doors open and you go through it as one of these Reapers, you begin to age. You don't experience that in the game in any way, shape, or form, but it's like a plot point. So basically, if you don't go and collect these 3 other souls from these 3 other giants to open this door, you'll continually age until you eventually die. So you're incentivized to, hey, you need to go and do this. This is pushing the plot along. and we can open this door, and at that point you will be able to cease this process of aging and no longer die. So you, of course, you have to fight many different monsters. You fight a giant frog, a witch, and I don't know what the last one is as of yet because I haven't completed this title. And beyond that, there is a final boss, which I have fought at a friend's house. I went over there and he actually completed the game. He and I went and played that, and the boss there is rather difficult at the end, but we were able to beat it. He and I just going back and forth playing on that, swapping out the controller. But there are a total of 4 bosses, 4 different areas that you have to explore. 3 areas, I think, and then the final one. Death's Door is a lot of fun, and it's a top-down. You get multiple different types of weapons as well. You have, of course, your primary weapon, which you get other ones that you can change between. There's even one that's, I believe, an old umbrella, and the point of it is to make the game more difficult. So it gives you more of a challenge to play the game as you go forward by choosing that weapon. There are other weapons that do more damage that are a better fit, that might do more damage, just interact in different ways. Some may be faster in their striking speed, others may be slower, but they hit harder. So it's kind of a trade-off. You have to decide, do I want to be able to get 3 or 4 shots in and have to dodge away, or do I want to just hit 2 and deal a decent amount of damage and then dodge away from there? Beyond that, you start with a bow and arrow. You later get a bomb, and a bomb that basically you charge and shoot off. And there's another one I can't think of right off the top of my head. I've unlocked 3 of the 4 because, of course, I am on the final area in this game before the final boss. I haven't gone back as of yet. I've been kind of sidetracked with everything else I've been playing on, but it is an interesting title. The art style is very dark looking. It's very, very nowhere, I guess the word I would be looking for there. It's very black and white looking. And even though they have lessened the lower saturation on the palette colors, not as vibrant, it suits the tone of the game because you, at the end of the day, you are a reaper. And you are out here trying to reap souls, trying to reap the souls of these 3 giants in order to get it back to the Crow Association headquarters. I'd recommend Death's Door. I watched the completionist play through this, and I knew from the moment that I saw the title, I was like, that looks very interesting. It looks right up my alley. It's isometric. It is a action title where you can definitely you can level up as well. So as you reap the lesser monsters or even the larger ones, you can go back to Crow headquarters and you can level up like your health, your speed, your dodge, and your power, I believe, on your attacks. And there are about 4 different upgrades for each of these that you can actually do, costing a greater and greater amount of souls. The thing on this though is, unlike in Souls titles like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Sekiro, when you die you don't lose those souls, thankfully. So there's no trek back to get those. I have a great love for isometric titles as a whole. I don't know what it is. Something about them draws me in. I like the style of those games. As long as the gameplay loop is fun and it is interesting enough, I'm there for it and I will enjoy those. And this is just another of those that I've been having a lot of fun with. I got to get back to it and finish those last off. Kind of got distracted with all the releases and everything else going on now. I highly recommend it though if you're on the fence. It's $20. It's well worth the cost. That's pretty cheap, and for the amount of gameplay, the time you'll have with the game, it's worth it. It's worth it. You can, of course, as you go throughout the game, you can pick up items that allow you to upgrade your health, as well as the other bar that you use to attack with. So you have like 3 or 4 of the little bars. I'll call it stamina or mana for the sake of simplicity. So you can get items that allow you to upgrade that, and there are hidden areas that you have to be on the lookout for if you want to find everything in this game. Beyond that, you can upgrade. You can upgrade, as I stated. There's some longevity to the game. Not sure of the amount of time it takes, but I would say this is probably like a 15-20 hour game. It's not overly difficult, but there will be some areas that you will probably die at and you'll have to repeat. And the healing in this game while you're out and about works a little bit differently. You pick up these seeds that you can then plant in specific pots. So you'll see a pot and you plant it, and then a flower will bloom in that area. And then at that area, if you return and you need health, you can pick up health there. This is helpful if you are running low on health and there are a lot of enemies around you. You can drop that in there and heal up. Now, these aren't in every area. They're few and far between, and you don't have to actually use the seed if you don't need it. So I find myself at this time at the area I'm at the game, I have a surplus of those seeds to plant in the pots, and I don't necessarily need them all because I'm doing a decent enough job of avoiding getting hit. Because, of course, you can have your standard strike button, you have your ranged weapon, and then you also have your roll buttons, so you can dodge away from attacks, dodge through them with those invincibility frames. Death's Door is one of those titles that I would recommend. I'm glad that it actually came over to Switch because I've been waiting to actually see this, and I was wondering if we were going to get it on another console. I think it dropped on PS4 as well. I missed that, and I went ahead and picked it up on the Switch, the console that I play less of. Doesn't matter to me as long as I'll eventually get back to it and play it. I will try to get through to done with this at some point and finish it. Just if nothing else to tick one off out of the backlog so I don't continue to grow that and just throw money away. One last title I wanted to discuss briefly that I've picked up that I'm having a lot of fun with. It is very different. It again is isometric, so it's top down. This one is Weird West. Now this comes from one of the former developers at Arcane Studios. They worked on Dishonored, and I believe they also may have worked on Deathloop a little bit as well. And that is Weird West. Weird West is an interesting title. It is very choice driven, so you can do many different things in this game. Of course, with Weird West being the title, it is set in the Wild West. So you play through as multiple different characters. I think there are 5 in total. I'm still on the first character. That's how fresh I am into the game. You start as a female bounty hunter. Her husband gets captured by these creatures and hauled off. Now, this is like the Wild West mixed with the occult, so you're going to see stuff like sirens, pigmen, monsters, spiritual zombies. There is outbreaks. There's events that can happen. It's called outbreaks. And if that happens and you happen to go by a graveyard or something like that, then all of a sudden these animated corpses are going to start hopping out of there and coming after you. And you deal with bandits and monsters, so there is a lot going on with this game. And then, of course, like you can go and do bounties, hunt people down, complete those. I've been doing a lot of those as of late. I'm the king of going to the side quest and ignoring the main quest for the longest time. So if this were on real time and time, my husband would be dead by the time I got there because I've went and hunted down every bounty that I've seen thus far. I've got about 10 hours into this game, if not more, probably more than that, honestly. I haven't looked at the log in a little bit. And I've just gone around hunting bounties down. I've gone to different areas. I'm exploring locations. And the traveling in the game is done by, it's got a large map with different locations, and it tells you how long it takes to get to those. And so it'll take you like 8 hours to get to one location, and then you'll have bounties across the map. And the bounties are very time sensitive, so it'll be like a 15-day deal. You pick up a bounty, you have 15 days to get over to the other side of the map to get that. Now, it may only take you a day to get there, but if you're like me and get distracted by 10 other things along the way, it can be troublesome, or you may be pressed for time by the time you get there. I haven't run into a situation yet where I was just out of time and unable to complete anything, but it's still a time constraint that's put on there to add some extra layers to the systems as a whole, I would say. Being, of course, a game by one of the developers or directors from a former Dishonored title, you can pick up everything. So, of course, I'm going around picking up everything I can. You can choose to be a good guy. You can choose to be a bad guy. You can go into town and murder everybody if you so choose. And one of the things I will say about the title that kind of irks me at times is the camera overview. Because you have many different abilities. You have the ability to aim. You would hold L2 and it'll put like a laser sight out there so you can see where you are aiming, which is greatly appreciated. But if you're not holding L2 and you move the left stick up and down, it's going to pan the camera up and down. And I've run into a couple situations where I was in combat and I would take my hand off of L2, the aim button, and then I would be trying to look around or something, and I accidentally pan the camera upward where it makes it harder to see some of the enemies or anything. Of course, it being an isometric view, you could block out enemies in that way behind a building or something, and that is not exactly ideal. It has a lot of elements to it, though. You can upgrade. There are two separate forms of upgrades you can get. Two different collectibles that do different things, and I think those are transferable across the 5 characters that you play across. And this game is built upon the idea of replayability because the choices you make have lasting impacts. I've been in shootouts and then people I've saved in previous situations with delivering medicine or just helping them when I happened across them while I was traveling. They've showed up and helped me out to make sure that I had an advantage so I could be up against a group of outlaws and I'm just hopelessly outgunned despite having 2 other people in my posse, and then this other person shows up to help out. It's called friendly intervention, and that's another layer that's just stuff like that happening is interesting enough because the world as a whole is steadily moving around you, whether you interact with it and cause something to happen or not. For instance, I happened across a group of witches that were in a circle summoning while I was in the middle of the desert. I went there and they summoned this thing and killed it immediately. I didn't have to interact with that at all. They did all of that on their own. They killed it and then they went along their way. I thought it was pretty cool to see something like that, and then a world that is constantly moving, stuff happening, even if you are not initiating that action. It feels like it's alive and really fleshed out. And I've had a lot of fun with it thus far. I'll probably continue to sink hours into it. That's what I'm going to play today after I get done with this, editing this, and hopefully posting this up. Weird West, as I said. It is a interesting title. I think it comes from Wolfbane Studio, something like that. Check it out if that's your sort of thing. It's interesting to say the least, and it is different from your usual. I had to take time away from Elden Ring to play on that because I saw some reviews on that. I was like, this looks pretty cool. I haven't seen anything like this, and it's that different factor that really drew me into it. Because I can look at that and I'm like, that is pretty neat. That's pretty neat. I have never seen anything like that. I'm glad that we have something like this now. But anyway, I just wanted to go over some of the games I've actually made some progress in on the backlog as of yet. Go over there with you guys, hold myself accountable, and maybe make a little series out of this where I can touch base on a regular basis. We can just go back and look at some of those games and give my thoughts on them as a whole. Because these are some interesting titles. They may be flawed in certain ways, but they are a lot of fun. And I highly advise that you definitely check these out or at least look into them and see if that might be your sort of thing. If it's not, I can understand that. Weird West is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Everybody is not going to like Eastward and Death's Door. They're all isometric titles, which I didn't exactly plan out that way, but that's just how it happened, unfortunately. And they may or may not be up your alley, but I have had a great deal of fun with them, and I hope I'll actually be able to finish the other two, Weird West and Death's Door, at some point going forward soon. Death's Door is going to probably be the shorter of those two experiences. I'll be able to finish it first, but I'm on Weird West at this time, so that's not going to happen anytime soon, at least for the foreseeable future. But again, I thank you for all your support. If you're new here, I appreciate that. And if you're a long-time listener, I appreciate you tuning in, sticking around with me to hear me chit-chat about games, rant about what I like to do, what I like to play, because I do have a lot of fun with this. Thank you again, and I hope you guys enjoy.